Recording 7.3 to 982-1 is Scout Vessel Luminous Inquiry. Observation Officer Zelfhardt. I have failed. I have failed my species, my collective, and perhaps all intelligent life in the known galaxy. My assignment was simple: locate the military installation of the newly discovered bipedal species from the third planet of this unremarkable yellow star system, assess their capabilities, and report back. The collective expected minimal risk, just another primitive civilization taking its first stumbling steps toward the stars. How catastrophically wrong we were. The human installation orbits their lifeless moon, hidden in the shadow of its dark side. My stealth systems should have rendered me undetectable to any species at their technological tier. They spotted me within 17 micropulses of my arrival. Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted United North American Space Command territory. Identify yourself, or we will take defensive measures. I maintained silence, activating additional cloaking fields. I needed to observe longer. My mission parameters required comprehensive assessment. The voice returned unnervingly calm. Very well. Last warning. Then, nothing happened. For 62 micropulses. Silence. I began to relax, adjusting my scanners to penetrate their orbital facility. That's when I noticed the small dark objects detaching from the station, 6 of them, moving with impossible acceleration. Our intelligence indicated humans couldn't tolerate forces above 9 Gering without losing consciousness. These craft were pulling 27 G. My vessel shuddered as the first projectile detonated nearby. Not an explosion, a spatial disruption field. Technology they shouldn't possess for at least 12 generations. I initiated emergency protocols, but 3 more detonations followed, each closer than the last. My ship's quantum positioning system failed. I was visible. I had no choice but to communicate. This is Scientific Observer Zelfhardt of the Galactic Collective. I come in peace. A different voice responded. Deeper. Authoritative. This is Admiral Jackson Blackwood, UNSCOM. Your peace involved lurking in our defensive perimeter with active scanning technology. Curious definition. I apologize for the intrusion. We are studying emergent spacefaring species. May I request permission to continue limited observation? A pause. Permission granted. Under escort. Prepare for boarding. Boarding. Our protocols explicitly forbid physical contact with pre-collective species, but refusing risked escalation. I had to learn more about their capabilities. Their boarding craft approached, a brutal angular vessel with what appeared to be excessive armor plating. Inefficient design by collective standards. I activated the airlock decontamination sequence and waited. 3 humans entered my ship. Their environmental suits were surprisingly compact, far more streamlined than the bulky protection they should require, but it was their movement that disturbed me. Fluid, precise, almost predatory. The leader removed his helmet. The face that emerged triggered a deep, instinctual revulsion, flat, with forward-facing eyes. The unmistakable configuration of an apex predator. Most spacefaring species evolved from prey animals or omnivorous foragers. These creatures evolved to hunt. Admiral Blackwood. He introduced himself, extending a limb in some cultural gesture I didn't recognize. Welcome to human space. I maintained distance. Thank you for not destroying my vessel. His mouth contorted into what I later learned was a smile, a gesture, horrifyingly similar to the threat displays of the apex predators on my homeworld. To our facility, he offered. Consider it a gesture of goodwill between potential allies. I should have refused. Protocol demanded it, but curiosity, the supposed virtue of my species, betrayed me. Their station was vast, far larger than external scans suggested. Sections were hidden behind quantum camouflage fields. Technology the collective believed was still theoretical. Humans moved with purpose through corridors lined with what appeared to be defensive weapon systems. "This is our research division," Blackwood explained, leading me into a laboratory space. The horror truly began there. They were modifying themselves, enhancing their already dangerous forms. Soldiers with neural interfaces that bypassed their primitive nervous systems, allowing reaction times that rivaled our most advanced AI constructs. Limb replacements that could exert forces sufficient to crush durasteel. Respiratory implants, enabling survival in environments that should be instantly fatal. Our exosuit program, Blackwood gestured casually to a mechanical construct that amplified their already considerable strength by factors of hundreds. "Why?" I asked, unable to contain my distress. "Why focus your development on such martial application?" Blackwood's expression changed subtly. "Survival." He led me to a sealed chamber. Inside was a holographic projection of the galaxy, remarkably accurate for their level of technological development. "We know we're not alone," he said quietly. "We've always known, throughout our history. We've prepared for contact. It's embedded in our psychology, the certainty that whatever waits beyond our atmosphere might not be friendly." "The collective is peaceful," I offered weakly. "Perhaps, but we've survived by preparing for predators, not friends." He touched a control, and the galactic map zoomed to show their solar system. "Do you know what makes humans different?" Observer Exelver had it. I remained silent, suddenly aware of a terrible truth forming. "We're from a death world," he continued. "Our planet tried to kill us with everything it had: microorganisms, climate, geography, other species. We didn't just survive, we conquered it all. Pain, radiation, toxins, extreme temperatures, they're all just obstacles we've overcome." He leaned closer. I smelled the oddly metallic scent of their breath. "But here's what terrifies me at night," he whispered. "We're bored. With no existential threats left, we create artificial challenges. We climb mountains that can kill us for recreation. We willingly enter environments that should be lethal, just to experience the thrill of survival." The revelation crashed upon me with terrible clarity. The collective had catalogued thousands of species across the galaxy. We classified them by technological development, ethical frameworks, potential for peaceful integration. We had never encountered a species that evolved by outthinking, outfighting, and outlasting everything that tried to kill it. A species that, rather than adapting to its environment, forced its environment to adapt to it. The most shocking truth wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their psychology. They don't fear the unknown. They hunger for it. They don't avoid danger. They prepare for it, then seek it out. As I returned to my vessel, Blackwood offered a final observation. "Your collective studies the stars through telescopes. We study them and ask, how do we get there? What resources do they contain? Can we survive there? Different questions lead to different civilizations. I'm transmitting this warning with my final power reserves. The humans allowed me to leave, a gesture of goodwill. They called it, I understand now, it was actually confidence. They know they have nothing to fear from us, but we have everything to fear from them." End transmission. Grand Arbiter Jalan's luminescent appendages pulsed with agitation as Scout Officer Jelvarik's transmission ended, plunging the chamber into uneasy silence. I stood at attention, still weak from quantum jump sickness, awaiting judgment. My failure to maintain stealth had transformed a routine observation into a first contact scenario with potentially catastrophic implications. "This cannot be verified," Strategic Director Nevmora finally said, her voice modulator pitched low with skepticism. "A single observer, clearly traumatized. The humans may have manipulated what Observer Exelvarek perceived." I bristled. "With respect, Director, I know what I witnessed. Their technological acceleration defies all predictive models. They've compressed millennia of development into mere centuries. Then we must act immediately." Expansion Overseer Tollivex interjected, his martial crests fully extended, a rare display of alarm from our military leadership, a preemptive strike while they remain confined to their system. We possess the capability to render their planet uninhabitable without risking direct engagement. Murmurs of agreement rippled through several counselors. The statistical models projected across the chamber's neural interface showed escalating threat assessments with each new variable I'd provided. Genocide. Science Elder Kelmath's voice cut through the chamber, her ancient form hovering slightly above her gravity disk. Have we abandoned 8,000 years of ethical advancement so easily? These humans haven't threatened us. They merely defended their territory, as would we. They haven't threatened us yet, Tulvex countered. Their psychological profile indicates inevitable expansions. Expansion requires resources. Competition for resources leads to conflict. Or trade, Kelnoth responded. Or cooperation. Your models presuppose human behavior will mirror our own historical patterns. The Grand Arbiter raised a primary limb for silence. Observer Zelvarechik, you had direct contact. What is your assessment? All eyes turned to me. My career. Perhaps the fate of civilizations hung on my response. They are dangerous, I began carefully, but not in the way we initially assumed. Their danger lies not in malice, but in their relentless adaptability. They've survived against improbable odds. Such species don't develop aggression without cause. They develop resilience, which makes them even more dangerous, Tulevex insisted. Or invaluable, I countered. There's something else the Council should know. I interfaced with the Chamber's projection system, accessing the encrypted data package I'd kept isolated from my main report, information so sensitive I feared its implications. During my final moments aboard their station, I managed to breach a secured database. The humans are aware of something else. The holographic display flickered to life, showing fragments of human intelligence reports, star systems going dark at the galaxy's outer rim, communication signals abruptly terminated, unusual energy signatures defying their understanding of physics. They call it the Silence, a phenomenon consuming stellar civilizations beyond their reach. They've been intercepting distress signals for decades, the final transmissions of species we've never encountered. The chamber erupted in shocked discussions. The Grand Arbiter's color paled visibly. Why wasn't this in your primary report? He demanded. Because I couldn't confirm its authenticity. The humans may have planted this information, knowing I would access it. To what end? Nevermore asked. To frighten us. Or, I hesitated, to warn us. 3 lunar cycles later, I found myself aboard the human diplomatic vessel Prometheus, approaching the neutral meeting point we'd established in deep space. After heated debate, the Council had narrowly voted to establish cautious contact rather than isolation or aggression. I was accompanying Science Elder Kelmath as technical advisor and translator. Talvex had insisted on sending a stealth military contingent, despite diplomatic protests. A precaution I couldn't entirely fault. You seem troubled, Observer, Kelmoth noted as we prepared for the humans' arrival. I'm concerned about what isn't in their diplomatic briefings, I admitted. Their militarization suggests trauma, not just evolutionary pressure. Perhaps today we learn what truly drives them, she replied. The human delegation was smaller than expected, just 3 representatives led by Admiral Blackwood, now dressed in formal attire adorned with symbolic medals, I assumed denoted accomplishment. The meeting proceeded with expected formalities until a sudden alarm blared throughout the vessel. One of Tulovex's stealth ships had detected an anomalous energy signature, approaching at impossible velocity. You brought additional forces, Blackwood accused, his posture shifting instantly to combat readiness. A precaution, Kelmath admitted. But this signature isn't ours. The approaching object defied our sensor classifications, neither ship nor natural phenomenon. It simply existed as a void absorbing electromagnetic radiation and gravitational fields alike. It's them, Blackwood whispered, fear evident for the first time since I'd met him. The silence. What happened next shattered all remaining preconceptions I held about humans. Instead of retreating to safety, Blackwood opened a direct channel to his hidden fleet. Initiate protocol firebreak. All vessels implement sacrifice barrier formation. Before we could process his words, 12 previously concealed human warships decloaked, forming a protective barrier not around their diplomatic vessel but around ours. "What are you doing?" Kelmath demanded. "Your vessel holds your species' scientific elder and diplomatic leadership," Blackwood stated flatly. "Ours contains expendable military personnel. The calculation is simple. You'll die," I said, stunned by their willingness to sacrifice themselves for beings they'd just met. "Maybe," Blackwood gave that disturbing smile again. "But dying to protect others is what humans have always done best." As the void entity approached, the human vessels implemented a technology we hadn't detected, some form of dimensional anchoring that prevented spatial distortion within their defensive perimeter. The cost was catastrophic energy drain from their systems. "We've suspected the silence uses dimensional folding to consume matter and energy," explained a human scientist. "This countermeasure is theoretical. We've never tested it." One by one, the human ship's power systems reached critical failure as they absorbed the dimensional strain. Their crews remained at their posts, transmitting data until the final moments. 3 ships were consumed entirely before the entity retreated, apparently unable to breach the dimensional barrier with sufficient speed to prevent data collection. In those brief moments, everything changed. Not because of the entity, terrifying as it was, but because of what the humans revealed about themselves. They weren't just predators who had conquered their world. They were protectors who would sacrifice themselves for the vulnerable, even aliens they barely knew. As we limped back toward collective space with terabytes of data on the entity, I found Kelmuth in deep conversation with Blackwood. "Your ship's sacrifice has given us our first tangible data on the silence," she said, "but at such cost." "Those crews knew the risks," Blackwood replied, "and now both our species have something we didn't have before." "What's that?" I asked. His predator eyes met mine, without flinching. "A fighting chance, if we work together." I realized then the true reason humans terrify the galaxy, not their capacity for violence, but their willingness to harness that capacity for something beyond themselves. Evolved from predators, they'd somehow developed the one trait predators never need: self-sacrifice. As a scientist, I found it biologically impossible. As a witness to their actions, I could no longer deny it. The Council will debate for cycles about whether to trust these humans. Some will see their sacrifice as strategic manipulation. Others will recognize a kindred moral species. But I alone know the truth that haunts me. In that moment of crisis, with death approaching, I calculated my survival odds and prepared retreat protocols. The humans calculated the same odds and moved to protect others. Which of us, I wonder, is truly the more evolved species? 6 lunar cycles after the incident with the silence, I found myself in the most restricted area of collective knowledge, the ancient archives. Our unusual research team represented the first joint collective human scientific expedition, assembled under emergency protocols that overrode 8 millennia of collective security doctrine. The archives rose around us like a living neural network, data strands pulsing with the accumulated knowledge of countless civilizations. Some records dated back to the pre-expansion era, before the collective had achieved interstellar travel. "These records are fragmentary at best," I cautioned the humans. "Many were damaged during the Great Schism." Dr. Wright, the human xenoarchaeologists, approached the interface reverently. "This makes Earth's Library of Alexandria look like a child's bookshelf." Science Elder Kelmath guided us deeper, past security barriers that hadn't been deactivated in generations. "What we seek lies in the Origin Vault, records of the precursor civilization. The species that founded the collective, Admiral Blackwood asked. No, Kelmuth corrected. The species that predated us all. The origin vault was smaller than I expected, a spherical chamber floating in null gravity, its walls lined with crystalline storage matrices that predated conventional data systems by eons. At its center hung a pulsing orb of pure information, the metacore. Our most sacred artifact, Kelmuth explained. It contains the only surviving records of the precursor civilization that achieved interstellar travel before any known species. We've only decoded fragments. Why show us this now? Blackwood asked, suspicion evident in his posture. Kelmuth's ancient eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. Because after reviewing the data your ships gathered about the silence, I found patterns, familiar patterns. She interfaced directly with the metacore, something I'd never witnessed any council member do. The chamber filled with holographic displays, star charts, genetic sequences, mathematical formulae beyond my comprehension. 3 million years ago, a civilization we call the Precursors achieved technological singularity, Kelmuth began. They spread throughout this galactic realm, establishing research outposts on thousands of worlds, including Earth. Dr. Wright asked, her voice barely audible. And including our homeworld, Kelmuth confirmed. But they didn't just observe, they experimented. The holographic display shifted to show genetic manipulation sequences, complex alterations to primitive species on dozens of worlds. My respiratory system seized as I recognized my own species' ancestral genome. They uplifted us, I whispered, the implications staggering. All of us. Differently, Kelmuth clarified. They selected species with particular traits and enhanced those traits. For my kind, it was cognitive processing and longevity. For your kind, she turned to Blackwood. It was adaptability and resilience. Dr. Wright shook her head. That's not possible. Human evolution is well documented. We have a clear evolutionary path from primates. Yes, Kelmuth agreed. They didn't create you from nothing. They merely adjusted your trajectory, introduced subtle genetic changes that would express themselves millions of years later. They did this to 17 species across 14 worlds. Why? Blackwood demanded. Kelmuth's expression darkened. Because they were at war. A war they were losing against an entity that consumed entire star systems. An entity they called the Devourer of Light. I translated from the ancient text now hovering before us. My blood ran cold. The silence. The precursors knew they couldn't win conventionally, Kelmuth continued, so they enacted a desperate plan. They seeded modified species throughout this galactic arm, each designed to develop different strength. Then they triggered the release of a temporal barrier that would contain the silence for precisely 3 million years. The implications crashed over me like a gravitational wave. The barrier is failing. That's why the silence has returned. Dr. Wright's scientific mind raced ahead. You're suggesting we were engineered as weapons. Not weapons, Kelmuth corrected. Solutions, different approaches to the same problem. My species developed exceptional longevity to preserve knowledge across vast timescales. Yours developed unprecedented adaptability to generate novel solutions. Others developed technological intuition, collective consciousness, quantum perception. So the 17 species were meant to, Blackwood began. Work together, Kelmuth finished, combining their unique capabilities to defeat what the precursors could not. But we've spent our histories separated, sometimes in conflict, I pointed out. Yes, Kelmuth admitted, the plan had flaws. The precursors couldn't predict exactly how we would evolve or interact. They simply created the conditions and hoped for the best. Dr. Wright was examining the genetic sequences with growing wonder. These markers, they're still present in human DNA. We've classified them as junk DNA because we didn't understand their purpose. Blackwood's expression hardened. So we've been pawns in some ancient game. Not pawns, I interjected, surprising myself with my defense of the precursors. Inheritors. They gave us the tools to survive what they could not. And now we must finish what they started. Kel'Zoth concluded. The convergence. Location, L Point Alpha, edge of Forbidden Sect. Present. The combined fleet of 17 species. Final recording. I never imagined I would witness the assembling of all 17 engineered species, yet here we stood, the culmination of a 3-million-year plan. The space around the L Point bristled with vessels of every conceivable design, the crystalline lattice ships of the myriad mind, the organic world ships of the Chlorovac, the phase-shifting armada of the temporal conservatory, and at the vanguard the combined fleets of humanity and the collective. Admiral Blackwood stood on the command deck of the UNS Defiance, now retrofitted with collective technology. The past 6 months had transformed human vessels into hybridized platforms combining our theoretical knowledge with their practical ingenuity. Dimensional breach in 3 minutes, announced Dr. Wright, now heading the Joint Scientific Division. Readings match previous encounters with a silence. The vast neural network connecting all 17 fleets hummed with coordinated activity. Each species contributed what the precursors had given them. The myriad mind's collective consciousness processing incalculable variables, the Chlorovac's organic technology generating self-healing barriers, the temporal conservatory manipulating localized time fields to give us precious seconds of advantage, and humanity. They brought what they had always possessed, the ability to adapt, to innovate in the face of extinction, to find unconventional solutions where none seemed possible. All vessels' final positions, Blackwood ordered. Remember the simulations. Remember what we're fighting for. The dimensional breach opened like a wound in reality itself, a perfect absence of everything. Expanding outward, the silence had arrived, larger and more voracious than any previous manifestation. It's consuming the barrier projectors, came a panicked report from the collective vessels. As expected, Blackwood replied calmly. Phase 2. That was when humanity revealed their final innovation, the one they had kept secret even from most of the Alliance. As the silence consumed the enormous barrier projectors, it triggered a chain reaction within them, releasing the quantum-locked human device at their core. Coherence achieved, Dr. Wright announced. Dimensional inversion in 3, 2, 1. What happened next defied conventional description. The silence, this entity that consumed light and matter, suddenly found itself being consumed, drawn into a recursive dimensional loop of its own creation. Its attempt to devour our technology had triggered a trap that used its own consumption process against it. My God, it's working, Blackwood whispered. For 63 agonizing seconds, the entity struggled against the inversion field, lashing out with tendrils of unreality that shattered 9 allied vessels, but the combined technological and biological adaptations of 17 engineered species held just barely. The silence collapsed upon itself, drawn into an infinitesimal point of infinite density, before vanishing entirely. Silence of a different kind fell across all communication channels as we processed what had occurred. Did we destroy it? I asked Dr. Wright. She shook her head, her expression a mixture of awe and exhaustion. Not destroyed, contained. We forced it into a closed time-like curve, feeding upon itself for eternity. A prison, not a grave, Blackwood added. Just as the precursors intended, Kelmuth said softly. 17 approaches, 17 perspectives, 1 solution. Epilogue. Location: Earth, North American continent, Rocky Mountain. Time: 1 year later. I stood beside Admiral Blackwood Jackson, as he now insisted I call him, watching the sunset paint the mountain landscape in hues my species could barely perceive. These informal diplomatic meetings had become a regular occurrence as our species navigated our new relationship. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" he asked. "When you first snuck into our orbital defense perimeter, I was certain I would be dissected for scientific research," I admitted, causing him to emit one of those barking sounds humans call laughter. "We probably would have considered it," he acknowledged with characteristic honesty. The summit facility behind us hummed with activity as representatives from all 17 engineered species collaborated on unprecedented joint ventures. Ancient rivalries and suspicions remained, but they were tempered by our shared heritage and victory. "Do you ever resent them?" I asked. "The precursors for engineering our species without consent?" Jackson considered this, watching an avian life form soar on thermal currents above the mountains. "Hard to resent something that happened 3 million years ago. Besides, they didn't determine who we became, only gave us the potential to be more than we might have been. Most species evolved to fit their environment," I observed. "We were designed to transform it." "That's the irony," Jackson replied. "In trying to create 17 specialized solutions, they accidentally created something better, 17 perspectives, that together see the complete picture." I contemplated this as the star dipped below the horizon. "Does it trouble you that our purpose, the reason we exist as we are, has been fulfilled?" Jackson smiled, no longer the threatening expression it once seemed. "That's the beauty of it, Zeld. Having fulfilled our Creator's purpose, we're now free to discover our own." As night fell, we looked up at the same stars that had witnessed the rise and fall of the precursors, the same stars that would now witness whatever we 17 species would become together. In the vast archives of the collective, there is a saying attributed to the fragments of precursor wisdom: "Intelligence is not measured by what one knows, but by what one does with that knowledge." For 3 million years we evolved separately, each developing the gifts they gave us. Now we move forward together, not as their creations, but as their legacy, not as 17 divided species, but as one united inheritance. The humans have a term for this: family. Not bound by identical genetics, but by shared purpose and mutual protection. What terrifies the universe about humans is not their capacity for violence, but their capacity for change. And what terrifies humans about the universe is not its vastness, but its indifference. Together, perhaps, we need not be terrified at all. End of final report. Observer Zelvharik, Dual Citizen, Collective and United Earth Alliance, First Contact, Historical Archives.